Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have another brand new Mattel figure to take a look at. We have had nothing but Mattel lately on the channel. There's just been tons of new stuff that has just recently started to hit, even more to come. So it's been pretty awesome lately being a Mattel Jurassic World fan. But today we have the Roar Attack Ceratosaurus. This is the newest variant. We have had this sculpt before, but we had it in kind of the JP3 style color scheme, or I guess Cretaceous as well, but this time we have a very interesting greenish version, and definitely intrigued to see this one because certain times I look at it and I'm like, oh, it looks really, really nice, but then other times I look at it and I'm like, well, actually it's kind of boring, kind of lazy. So I'll be intrigued to break it out of the package here in a minute and take a look at the figure, in all of its glory out of the packaging. But as you can see that we have that kind of standard Dino Escape Camp Cretaceous packaging right there for the Ceratosaurus. But then here on the back we have an image of the Ceratosaurus showing off the action feature, as well as, again, the other two figures that are in this wave of Roar Attack figures, with the Kentrosaurus we just reviewed yesterday and the Allosaurus, which unfortunately is not quite out yet, or at least not that I know of. So let's go ahead, pop this out of its box, and take a look at it. So here is our Ceratosaurus now with the tail attached and out of the packaging, looking very interesting, and I will say that it's definitely not near as nice as the last one, and unfortunately, I'm not super excited about it. Like, I'm really not. I thought I was going to like it a lot more than I currently am. One thing I noticed right away is there's a lot of sloppiness with the paint on this one in the face, which I will show you here in a moment, as far as like around the teeth and stuff. Really sloppy on the part of Mattel. But also this one, I feel like because there's so little color, like, we really have two colors for it. That's it. It seems like we have that really dark gray or a black up there on the top, and then the green for the body, and that's it. Like, it's a very lazy paint scheme on the part of Mattel, and I was really hoping, when I pulled it out, that I would see paint out onto the tail, because if there were, those black stripes running all the way out, well, it's not even really stripes, but that design with the darker black coloration that ran all the way out onto the tail, it would have been alright because it's a little bit different, and although we're lacking paint in certain areas, like an alternate color for the lower jaw and stuff, they would have made up for it with the color out onto the tail, but they didn't do that either. Like, it just doesn't look all that interesting color-wise. It's a kind of a fun little alternate variant of the Ceratosaurus. It's just also kind of a boring version of the Ceratosaurus, but the only way to truly tell how okay or good or bad or whatever this figure is with a closer look, so let's go ahead and do that right now. So, of course, we have reviewed the sculpt in the past. We do not need to do that again here with this version. If you'd like to see a more detailed review of the sculpt itself, you can always check out the initial version when I had reviewed that JP3 style paint scheme. You could check that out by either going to the description, as I will have a link there to that review, or of course checking out the playlists that I have here on the channel, as I do have a Jurassic Park / Jurassic World playlist full of different Mattel, Kenner, Hasbro, all kinds of Jurassic reviews, which would include the Ceratosaurus review for this figure. But what we really need to take a look at with this one is anything that differentiates this one from the previous release, which would of course be the color scheme, which you can see that this one really has just a green for the face. We don't really see much else going on aside from the green, except for this black coloration that kind of leaks in from the back of the head up into the eye area. You can see it kind of runs a little bit there under the eye socket, but also up over the eye, and then starts to head toward the palate, but also cuts off before it ever reaches it at all, which is a bummer because, again, on a figure that has so little paint application to it, you would expect maybe at least some paint to kind of stripe into the face or something to just sort of make it a little bit more memorable, but we don't have that. We also have eyes painted with a yellow, but the eye is not placed very well. You can see it's kind of missed the mark and it's a little bit sloppy. It does appear as though we have a black pupil though, which is a plus, but that's also because we have that black coloration there that kind of runs around and behind the eye, so that's probably what is responsible for the black pupil itself. Now if we look over here, look at how much sloppiness we have as far as the paintwork on the mouth area. Like, it's just all over the front of the snout here, and it's even back here. That is very strange. This is not something I've really ever encountered with Mattel in the past, so it's quite shocking to me that the paint is as sloppy as it is. The eye over here is also not placed very well. It's also missed the mark a little bit. Not too far. It's a little closer, I think, than the initial eye. This eye looks wonky to me. But as a whole, the paintwork of this one is really quite sloppy. We do have an articulated jaw, of course, which is always a plus, and the teeth look okay as far as the paintwork inside the mouth, so that's not too bad. The sloppiness seems to be limited to the outer area of the mouth, not so much inside the mouth. We can see that the inside sports a purplish tone of color and also has a gloss coat, and we do have the purple on the upper side and lower side of the jaws, which is definitely a plus. So at least the inside of the mouth isn't too bad. The trademark Ceratosaurus horn here is painted with kind of like a light green, which is a very interesting idea. And I actually do quite like that area. I think that, looks pretty good as far as the coloration used, especially because the majority of the dinosaur is darker tones, with even the green itself being a darker tone of green, and then that light green kind of plays off of the darker tones pretty nicely. And it's also interesting to see a green horn for a Ceratosaurus, not something that I think I've ever really seen before. And then as you move back into the neck, you start to see that black coloration just kind of scramble and scatter all over the place. Like, it doesn't really seem to have any specific design to it. It's just anywhere and everywhere, but it looks really cool, and I like how it's like a combination of the green and black here, and it just kind of jumps back and forth, trades places here. But then the black coloration ends really abruptly here in the hip region, which is super common when it comes to Mattel. Like, that's probably their favorite thing in the world to do, is to stop the alternate coloration of their figures dead in the hip region and then give us nothing out onto the tail, and that's exactly what we have for this Ceratosaurus. We do not have any paint application other than the green out here. We do have some of the speckles, sort of, if we can see. It's a little hard. There's one. There's like one here, one there. It's not like they usually are, where it's really quite abundant. So on a figure that already is lacking paint application, there's a severe lack of even the speckles. They are here, but they're just not very abundant. You can see the underside of the figure as well. Doesn't really have much going on as far as paint application. Like, there's no alternate tones of color down here at all. Nothing really going on paint-wise anywhere on the underside of the figure. I don't even really see speckles. There's the Jurassic Facts app code if you would like to add this to your collection. But normally you have some sort of coloration here on the underside, and normally also a lot of the speckles. You usually see them all over the feet. You don't have that on this one at all. We don't have painted nails. We do sort of have a glossy look for the nails, but not all that glossy. So at least that's kind of a plus. But honestly, this is a really, really boring and lazy repaint on the part of Mattel. I still think it looks okay for what it is. Like, I do like the darker tones of color and how they play off of each other. And it could potentially be a realistic coloration for a Ceratosaurus, but I just feel like, as far as Mattel goes, who already usually has kind of lazy paint applications, this might be the laziest one yet. Now, as far as articulation goes, it's exactly the same figure again as the previous Ceratosaurus. So if you have that, you'll already know what the articulation is, but we'll go over it anyway. So for the jaw, you have the upper and lower jaw, which is one thing that's really cool, that you can have both of them move here, so you can really get a nice wide gaping open mouth. You also have articulation in the arms, which can go forward and back, out away from the body, and then in the legs, which can go forward and back, also out away from the body, so we can almost attempt to split. And then we have articulation in the tail, which can go all over the place. It can swivel, left, right, up, down, all of that. As far as the action feature goes, it's the usual Roar Attack action feature with that kind of obnoxious looking sliding button. So we will go ahead and operate it. It's going to be exactly the same as it was last time, but we'll do it again. So I do have kind of like a love-hate relationship with this action feature, because I hate the button. Absolutely hate this gaping hole up here. It just looks awkward and out of place. But I love having the ability to keep the mouth open, so it can really create a cool display for your dinosaur. Like, it really creates some awesome posing options for your dinosaurs when you can operate it this way. But also at the same time, like, if you're a kid trying to play with this, when you use the button to make the mouth chomp, the action feature causes the sounds to kind of go like really quickly, and they don't even finish, like they just go all over the place. So I'll give you an example of that. So if you want the dinosaur to actually chomp and, attack whatever is nearby, these sounds are just going to go haywire. They don't follow through. I feel like it should kind of like just play the one sound. Even if you're still moving through, the one sound goes. And once that sound stops, the next time you move it would then activate a new sound. That's how it should go, but it doesn't. So it's kind of a mess as far as the, sounds and action feature goes. But again, has a little bit of a plus being able to display it with the mouth open, but at the same time, a few negatives. As far as a size goes, for a length, you were looking at 12.5 inches or right around 32 centimeters. And then for a height, with the positioning that it is currently in, you are looking at about the 4.5 inch range or 11.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line, showing you that this Ceratosaurus is exactly the same size as your standard Roar Attack figure, and also again the exact same size as the previous Roar Attack Ceratosaurus. I absolutely love Ceratosaurus, so anytime I can get a new Ceratosaurus figure, it is always a great day, even if this one is particularly boring, and it's an even better day when you can get one that's quite sizable, and you can definitely see that here in comparison to these figures that this Ceratosaurus does sport a very impressive size. So this brand new Mattel Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous Dino Escape Roar Attack Ceratosaurus is okay, kind of. Like, I love the fact that we got more Ceratosaurus from Mattel. I always am completely open and willing to add another Ceratosaurus to my collection because it's such a very cool dinosaur. I love Ceratosaurus, and I really love the JP3 style Ceratosaurus, or I should at this point just say Jurassic Park, Jurassic World style Ceratosaurus, because now it's appeared in Camp Cretaceous and JP3. But I absolutely love the appearance of the Ceratosaurus from the film and show, but at the same time, I just wish Mattel would have put a little more into this one because it could have been a really cool release, and I think it looks good with the tones of color they've given it. It just needed a little more to be a good figure. Like the dark black and dark green colors play off of each other really well, kind of gives it a little bit of like a jungle type of a vibe, but at the same time, a nice realistic tone, and kind of gives it a creepy appearance with such dark tones of color. Like, I would be horrified if I were in the jungles and stumbled upon a dark and creepy looking Ceratosaurus that looked like this. But as far as Mattel's figure goes, again, it was so close to being a good figure, but then they just gave up, it seems. Like the coloration, there should be some color to the underside. If you're going to have this coloration where they usually do this thing where the color stops dead as far as the alternate tone of color right in the hip region, they should at least apply some coloration to the underside to the dinosaur. This one does not have that, so to make up for that, you would think they would have maybe taken that black color out onto the tail, because that's something that with every single Mattel figure I feel like would improve them so much, is coloration out onto the tail, but they chose not to do that on this one either. I don't know what they were thinking when it comes to the paint job of this one, but it was just so lackluster and not interesting, if you ask me. On top of that, there's a lot of sloppiness with the paint because the eyes, neither eye is placed in a good spot. There's also sloppiness with the coloration from the teeth that has run up onto the jaw in two different areas, really making the figure look unappealing and sloppy overall. The fact that we, of course, do not have painted nails is always a downside. That's never going to change until Mattel decides to change themselves and start actually adding nail paint onto their figures. So, if you ask me, this figure is an easy pass for pretty much anybody that has the original version, the more JP3 style paint scheme. That one is far superior to this one, and this one is pretty much a lazy repaint from Mattel. Not even a good repaint, because again, Mattel, a lot of people call the fact that they release so many repaints lazy. I love the repaints, but this one here, this is definitely a lazy repaint. So if you are interested in this, I will include a link in the description to where I purchased mine on Target, but again, it's not something that I feel like you absolutely need to go out and buy unless you're just looking to create kind of a pack of Ceratosaurus. One way or another, though, if you do want it, I will leave a link in the description, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.